que esto era tan importante que esto debía ser presentado a todas las personas en Houston que podían votar.
The ordinance passed, we kept hearing the same language, that this was something that needed to be done because other cities had done it, that this was because everyone needed to be equal. And so all these lies and misconceptions kept ringing in our ears, and we said, we got to really bring out the truth on this. And so we felt that we had to increase our action, we had to make people aware what this meant, and that we had to intensify our efforts to stop it because it was no good news at all for anyone.
We followed the Houston City Charter, which allowed us to address this by having a petition signed by all the people and having this put to a vote of the people.
We only had 30 days to gather the required number of signatures at that point. And so it was a pretty substantial effort, but as we know, we had to gather and turn in 17,269 verified signatures, and we turned in over 54,000 signatures in total.
Under the First Amendment, not only do you have a freedom of religion, not only do you have freedom of the press, not only do you have freedom of speech, but there's another important component under the First Amendment, and that's the right to petition government for perceived redress of grievances. And this was a grievance. In Houston, the constitution for the city, if you will, is called the Charter, the Houston City Charter. It has a provision in it that says if you don't like an ordinance that the city council has passed, you can challenge it. You got to get a whole bunch of signatures, 17,000 and some change to be exact. But those folks have to sign the document within 30 days of the passage of the law and then file it with the city secretary.
Well, I would love to say that it was a highly sophisticated, well-oiled machine that just ran like clockwork. But in reality, something like that rarely ever is. It's a let's get out there and throw everything out there we can. Churches getting signatures. We posted it online so people could download it. We actually did do some paid signature gathering in certain areas of the community. But ultimately, it was a combination of all those efforts, and it was really hard to measure.
And I myself became very involved in the translation process, in informing the Hispanic community, because as a Latino pastor, I understand the Hispanic community, and they do have family values, and so I wanted to make sure our Latino community had the understanding of what this new ordinance meant.
I think the mayor, with her dictative leadership, didn't foresee the groundswell of what was coming with the petition. And so people were excited. People were signing, and people was eager to sign. It was a slam dunk. Everybody was like, oh no, men and the women, oh no, let me sign. And they signed. And so the petition was an exciting moment. And they quite just didn't think that we would be able to quite accomplish that goal.
I was let's say, not highly in a condition of tranquility during that time, because it was just very intense. One of the things that we also did during this 30-day process was, at a certain point we would have teams at churches verifying the signatures, going through the voter rolls and actually putting voter registration numbers down so that we actually knew that we had registered voters at a certain level. We pre-verified over 31,000 out of that 54,000 that we knew were registered Houston voters.
When it ended up how many petitions that we got, oh my God, I was just totally on cloud nine. I just couldn't believe it. But in the end, we got 54,000 plus, which was phenomenal.
It was a significant accomplishment. It was the first time that a referendum had been qualified in the city of Houston in decades. It was just a substantial achievement.
I was right there when they delivered those petitions to the city secretary, when they pulled that truck up and we took that wheelbarrow off and rolled them boxes up in there, and people were looking like, what is all of this? And we went in the city secretary's office. She told us stack them in the room, and we went in and stacked boxes, and I could see the expression of her people in her office on their faces like, we've got to count all of this. It was one of the most gratifying things I'd ever seen.
It was a very emotional moment because I saw those boxes, and to me they meant lives. To me, it was more than a signature. It meant a human being that was giving witness that he or she did not want this ordinance in the city of Houston. It represented families. It represented the effort of the citizens of Houston. And to see those boxes being brought into the city hall meant to me that our effort had given the fruit of what Houston was about. And so we were very emotionally filled with joy and happy that the people had spoken.
LBGT organization of people who was supporting the mayor, and the mayor supported them. They were there watching as we delivered all of these signatures. And of course, we did a press conference. And then immediately after our press conference, the mayor called one. And so we knew right then that we was gonna look for some drama on the behalf of the city and the mayor and the city attorney, and consequently, we did.
And we thought that was going to be the end of it, that the government of the city of Houston was going to respect those signatures because that was the right of the people to speak out.
The boxes were brought into the city secretary's office, and she stopped counting at 19,000 because we had already passed the threshold. And at that point, the mayor and the city attorney inserted themselves in the process and then said that we didn't meet the threshold.
The city secretary in Houston is a wonderful lady. Her name is Anna Russell, 42-year veteran. Anna Russell's outlasted a lot of Mayor Parkers, I can assure you. And she's kind of like, if you think about baseball, the umpire. Well, just like baseball's umpire, the Houston City Charter empowered Anna Russell to call balls and strikes on the validity of our signatures. And so if you think about it, this petition that had 54,000 and plus names on it, we pitched it metaphorically across the plate to Anna Russell. And guess what? She called it not a ball, but a strike. Well, her decision under the city charter is supposed to carry the day. That ends it. We get to vote.
And after the city secretary had made her count, she came up to 19,000 plus. She went 2,000 plus signatures over what was required just to make sure that everything was legitimate. The next step is to notify the mayor, then put it on the agenda and let the council hear it out. And then the council at that point was to do one or two things. They either could repeal it, since the majority of the city was opposed to it, they had enough signatures required by charter, or to suggest that it goes on the ballot and that it would be voted on by the citizens of the city. Well, that got, hijacked because the city attorney overrode the city secretary and he made a count of his own.
The mayor's office intervened in the qualifying of those petition sheets that never happened before in the city, and decided that we didn't have enough signatures. They disqualified more than 36,000 signatures in the city.
When I heard that the city attorney had no standing, I knew that was a huge, huge affront of the right to vote. That's what really kicked it off for me, is that this is not right. We have to stand against it. We have to fight back and just say, this is wrong. We're going to take this to the courts and allow the courts to decide.
The city of Houston, in its zeal, directed by the mayor, to try to win this case took some positions that really ought to frighten anyone who's listening. One of the things they did to try to get the number of valid signatures reduced between the level that was legally required so we wouldn't get a vote was to say that 8,100 people didn't have good handwriting. I think back to Selma, Alabama, and can you imagine if you had a line of civic-minded African-American mature voters who wanted to say their conscience at the ballot box, being singled out one by a mayor to say, let me see your handwriting, because if it's not good enough to satisfy me, it's not good enough for you to vote. The Justice Department would be down in a New York minute. We'd have indictments and criminal investigations all over the place. And yet that's what happened in the city of Houston, the fourth largest city in the country.
Next thing we know is the press conference, at which we hear on a Friday that, well, we did have enough. And then on Monday, the mayor holds the press conference on the very last day legally allowable for them to report the results and announce that, in fact, they determined we fell short because the city attorney had stepped in and invalidated over 50% of the petition sheets on legal technicalities that he had no authority to do under the city charter. So here we go again.
The first thing that came through my mind was the memories of what the country that my parents had brought me out of. The memories of what my parents had taken me out to never live again, where if you speak, you get denied the right to speak. You get intimidated, where they make you understand that your voice has no significance. And as I heard that the signatures were rejected, I remember speaking with the rest of the pastors and saying, "What is happening in this city and in America?"
We believe that she did her job, but then not very long after that, we know that the mayor and the attorney try everything they can to suppress it. They would not let this go easy because they want it so bad. It's not for the people, but for some particular person in this particular ordinance that is wanted so bad, that willing to do everything she can to suppress the voice of the people of the city.
To me, it was like a terrible earthquake that had just happened, where we were losing the values that had costed this nation so much. And it was an alarm sounding like saying, wake up, or it's going to be too late pretty soon.
They didn't play according to the rules of the law. And that shows us often, right now in many of our cities, that we have public officials who say that they serve the community when actually they do not.
It's so unfortunate when you see somebody who is a public servant and, in fact, an officer of the court as an attorney who essentially, by all measures, was willing to act as a political agent of the mayor and violate his oath of office as an attorney and his responsibility to the people as the city attorney of Houston.
He's a brilliant lawyer. His interjecting himself into this was really out of character, I think, for somebody as intelligent as he is. But evidently he knew there would be no criminal ramifications. And it worked for a while.
When we looked at the framework of the intent, clearly was, and as we learned later, and things that he said like, we need to kill this in the crib, that he was an agent of, but acting complicit with the mayor, and essentially making sure this didn't go to the vote of the people. And this is, again, another example of the results of when we elect people who don't have strong or the wrong moral values.
She had a very tough, very strident, non-faith-based city attorney that was just going to attack no matter what anyone told him. It was the hubris of a mayor that decided that she could do anything, that there was nothing sacrosanct left in this world, because she was spending the state's money. because she was spending the taxpayers' money against the faith-based community.
Andy Taylor is a brilliant attorney. He was the first assistant attorney general for the state of Texas. Now he's in private practice, and he's a brilliant constitutional attorney.
Look, we were taking on the fourth largest city in America, and we had to decide whether this was important enough to do this right. And that's really what I felt pretty strongly about, was that if we were going to win, and it was worth winning, then we needed to have somebody who really believed was the A-team on the field, and that's why we reached out to Andy and brought him on board.
David Feldman, the city attorney for the city of Houston, called me, and we'd known each other for years, and asked if I'd be willing to represent the city of Houston in the Hero case, and I said absolutely not. I can't, in good conscience, represent the city of Houston, and in fact I've already been called by some wonderful folks who organized a petition drive to get rid of this bad ordinance, and that's who I'm representing.
Andy Taylor was advising us along the way, but then when we filed the lawsuit, Andy Taylor was our attorney that filed the lawsuit. So God gave us, very, very interesting, He gave us a man who not only was a very, very strong believer, but He gave us a man who was very well qualified. And to see Andy in the courtroom, 1 verses 15, you talk about David and Goliath.
So what happened is Mayor Parker put down this petition and said, go ahead, sue me. We're not going to have a vote in Houston. And so we did. We filed not one lawsuit, not 2 lawsuits, but 3 lawsuits. And we had a literal David and Goliath battle because the city has enormous resources. That's why they say you can't beat City Hall. All that money and all that power. They have an internal city attorney's office. It's got over 40 lawyers whose job it is to try to effectuate this ill-fated plan of the mayor. But they didn't stop with internal lawyers. They went outside. They hired the 3 most powerful, best law firms and the best lawyers that money can buy anywhere in the state of Texas. And so after I filed this lawsuit on behalf of all the citizens of Houston, I found out that it was me against 15 lawyers in the courtroom day in and day out for well over a year.
I knew it was going to be a tough, long legal fight, and it was going to require some funds. So that's where I got involved in helping Dave and his group of friends, and I got some of my business associates in the business community to come alongside and help fund part of the legal costs of defending and getting this ballot issue on the ballot.
We walk into the courtroom, and anybody that's been in a courtroom, you know, as the attorneys all go up to their places, and here you go, over to one side is the defense, over on the other side is the plaintiffs and so forth, and well, here we were, Andy on one side representing us, and then just this row of attorneys kind of pouring into the courtroom on behalf of the city.
Something that happened to me personally that was bothersome during the trial is I began to receive death threats, and that made me very nervous. I began to think about my personal security, worried about how am I going to go from the hotel in the morning to the courthouse. And what was a real blessing is that when I reported that internally to the team of pastors who were surrounding me, you know what they did is they escorted me from the hotel to the courthouse every day, putting their own personal liberty and their own personal security at risk to make sure that I got there okay. Again, it just shows that together we can accomplish so much for God that we can't accomplish by ourselves. One of the most demonic moments in this case came when the mayor decided, okay, pastors, I'm gonna intimidate you and I'm gonna punish you for standing up for this. And so I'm gonna issue subpoenas for your sermons. And I want to look through your writings. I want to read your text messages and emails, because if you're going to play politics, then your pulpit is fair game. And you know what that subpoena said on the front page? That if you don't comply, you're going to be fined and imprisoned.
By this time, when the subpoenas came about, I literally was blown off my feet, because I didn't think that the mayor of the largest city in Texas, the 4th largest city in America, would go so far that she was so adamant about making this work that she went to the extent to literally violate the rights of pastors. From the federal law, it's a violation of our civil rights to even ask for our sermons. The nation